Alright, so magic is cool. Unfortunately, Dungeons & Dragons has a lot of magic users, a lot of spellcasters, more so than is necessary. So we're going to break down a couple. We're going to talk about the ones that cast with charisma. We're going to talk about warlocks, and we're going to talk about sorcerers. And we're going to try and decide, which one's better. Now, I know I can hear you now typing, but Lucas, bards cast with charisma too. You're right, they do. And we're not talking about them right now. Right now, it's warlocks and sorcerers, because they do have a couple things in common. In fact, at first glance, they look like they're very, very in tune with each other. They're really not. But let's talk about their commonalities. So first thing they have in common, like all spellcasters, is, well, they're spellcasters. Another thing they have in common, I've said it a couple times already, they cast with charisma. So they're high charisma characters, or they should be. Now, here's something a lot of people don't know. At first glance, you wouldn't really notice it because the sorcerers have a much larger cantrip list to look through, but every single cantrip the warlock has, with the exception of one, the sorcerer also has access to. That one obviously being Eldritch Blast. So, cantrips. And then they also have a fair amount of spells in common as well. Not all of them. I'd say at a quick glance it looks like probably about 60 to 70%, which is fair. And then they both get something moderately cool at first level. So, first level buff. And that's where the commonalities end. So, the first thing that they differentiate on, it's going to kind of piggyback off this first level buff. But I'm going to start off by saying this. It's how they get their magic. And you can come at me sideways all you want in the comments. The way the sorcerers get their magic is the most boring. That's right. More boring than the wizard's ability to read. I'm coming after you, sorcerers. Your days in the sun are numbered. Now, the warlocks, however, get their magic in what I think is the most interesting way. They get their magic by forming a contract, a pact, with their patron mommy. I mean their patron. Now, a patron can be anything from a devil to an angel, god, goddess, anything that is intelligent enough and has enough magic to be able to give magic to a mortal being. I once had a player whose patron was a hyper-intelligent beholder. Been around for centuries, super strong. I thought that was really cool. I know that probably seems kind of common to you guys, but I thought it was really cool at the time. Now, depending on what type of patron the warlock picks, that will decide whether or not, or it will decide what extra abilities they get. Just like the sorcerer's ancestral bloodline will decide what features or possible added cantrips or spells that they get. So it's cool. It is a buff, kind of. And it's definitely something that you want to think about before you make your decision. You don't want to just jump right into the first one that sounds cool. So they do have that. Once again, that is the first level buff. However, another thing that they differentiate on is health pool. And I know what you're thinking. They're casters. They're not supposed to have a lot of health. Well, I kind of agree with you on that one. While a sorcerer, every time you level up, you get to roll a d6 and add your constitution modifier, or take 4 and add your constitution modifier. The warlock's built different. It's a little bit tougher. You get to roll a d8 and add your con modifier, or take a 6 and add your con modifier. And that's because when you get to level 3 and you get your pact boon, there's a couple packs that make it so that you can be a frontline fighter. I still wouldn't really recommend it, but with the D8 plus your con modifier, you definitely have the ability. With both of these classes, if you have any desire to be near the front line, I would recommend at 4th level you forgo your ability score improvement and take the tough feat, but that's for another video later on. Next thing that they differentiate on is subclasses. Now, depending on what you consider a subclass, technically neither one of them has a set subclass. The Sorcerer's version of a subclass is their Ancestral Blood, which they get at level 1. They do get a couple new things at level 3 from it, but it's not the same. Whereas at level 3, the Warlock gets a Pact Boon. And this is going to give them new spells, new technically features. They're not really features, but it could potentially change the way you've played your character depending on which Pact Boon you go with. So I'm willing to count it as a subclass. I'm less likely to count the Ancestral Bloodline as a subclass just because you get it at level 1. But whatever. It is what it is. You know? It's not something that your character as a person would be able to decide. But we'll count it as a subclass anyway. So, the next one, and this was a big one. This one is really going to change your view on these possibly. It's where the Sorcerer really reigns supreme, and that's going to be spell slots. See, the Sorcerer gets an accurate amount of spell slots. It gets a decent amount of spell slots. It gets a usable amount of spell slots. The Warlock, however, yeah, for the first 2 levels, the Warlock has 1 spell slot. It gets a meager, shitty amount of spell slots throughout its entire life. And on top of that, whenever you cast a leveled spell, you have to cast it at the highest level you can cast it at. Which means once you hit level 3, you can only cast 2nd level spells. Or you can cast 1st level spells, but you have to cast them at the 2nd level. And while that takes away any thought process on, well, what level do I want to cast a spell at, it also takes away some of your versatility in the way of you have significantly less spell slots. And that's kind of not great. But it's something that's still doable. It's something that's manageable. And at the 2nd level, you're going to get Eldritch Invocation. So you're going to change what your Eldritch Blast does, which is a cantrip, so who needs spell slots anyway? That's going to be your main form of attack, depending on what Pact Boon you go with. So, in a way, spell slots doesn't really matter to Warlock, but you're still a Spellcaster with a measly amount of spell slots. So, and they both get a 2nd level buff, but they're so vastly different that I'm going to put it on the differentiation. So at 2nd level, Sorcerer gets spell slots. Those spell slots give it access to meta magic, not spell slots, sorcery points. Haha, forget I said spell slots that time. They get sorcery points, and sorcery points are used for meta magic. I've already done a short on meta magic, so if you want that, if you want more information on it, I would recommend going to my channel and finding that's fairly recent. I think I explained them pretty well because the book has these long, drawn-out explanations that kind of make sense, but kind of don't. The player's handbook is irritating. We'll leave it at that. But metamagic's really cool. It lets you do a number of things. Anything from turning a full action spell into a bonus action to making it so that you can copy a spell you've already cast. It's really cool. It's a fun, gimmicky feature that I personally love using. I love seeing it be used and honestly abused by my players. It's a lot of fun. And then like I said, the Warlocks get Eldritch Invocation, which lets you change your Eldritch Blast in a number of ways. So they do both have that, but they're so vastly different. The sorcery points are a lot more versatile than the Eldritch Invocations. So the Sorcerer has a couple things going for it, but the Warlock is also very useful in a lot of different ways, especially depending on what pact boon you go with. Now, in my opinion, and it does break my heart to say this, I would say that the Sorcerer would be more useful in a campaign than a Warlock. No matter how boring their way of getting magic is, you can't deny that their use of a larger number of spell slots, as well as their meta magic and sorcery points, make them a better ally to have. That's my opinion. If you've got a differing opinion, please say it in the comments below. And remember, if you've learned anything at all from this video, I think you should go ahead and subscribe, because I'm going to be teaching a lot more stuff in the near future. Thanks for watching.